Welcome back. We are in chapter 18. This is the nutrients and metabolism chapter. This is video 4. Yes, this is video 4. So we ended up talking about the water soluble vitamins in the previous videos. So now let's talk about minerals. Minerals are inorganic compounds, meaning they do not contain carbons. All right, so minerals are inorganic elements that are absolutely required for metabolism in order for your cells to function, to be able to build things, to be able to tear things down. You need minerals. Minerals are usually extracted from soil by plants. So oftentimes, in order to get the minerals we need to eat more plant-based diet, but not just a plant-based diet, but a plant-based diet that had healthy soil. If you ever hear people talk about soil, you ever listen to gardeners or people who are growing certain food, they talk about the health of the soil. And the health of the soil, the healthier the soil, the more minerals and beneficial bugs and fungi and stuff are in the soil, the more the plants that are grown in that soil will have that. And that means that'll have the plants that are grown in more mineral rich soil will have more minerals for you to use in order to have proper metabolic function by your cells. Minerals are obtained from plant foods, or when we're eating animal-based product, meat, eggs, milk, cheese, etc., we are getting minerals from the animals, but actually it's because those animals ate plants that had the minerals in them. So when we're eating meat-based diet, you want to eat healthier versions of those animals that were not stressed out, those animals that were able to eat a varied diet. Many commercial farmers, like if we're talking about beef, the animals are in very close quarters. I mean, just think about if you had to be in a room with 100 other students and it was a small room, you'd get stressed out pretty quickly. Imagine living like that. And then you're only given one type of food, a very highly processed food, right? Most cows are given, I think, cornmeal or like a wheat-based meal. Um, and that's not very varied. They're not grazing on grass the way they should, or many times they're not. Um, and they're not getting the minerals. And so the animals that we eat often don't have as many minerals because they're not able to eat as many minerals. So, moral of the story, again, eat more leafy green vegetables, eat more plant-based products, or at minimum, eat better quality animals so that you get more minerals, so that you are taking in these inorganic elements so that your cells can function properly. So some of the characteristics of minerals. Minerals make up about 4% of your body weight. So if you weigh 100 pounds, 4 pounds of that will be minerals. If you weigh 200 pounds, about 8 pounds of that, roughly, will be minerals. Minerals are most concentrated in the bones and the teeth. Calcium is a mineral. Phosphorus is a mineral. So remember, we talked about the inorganic compounds. I'm hoping that you're starting to make connections. The inorganic salts that make your bones hard, right? Those inorganic salts are mineral compounds like calcium and phosphorus that are deposited in the bones, and it gives those bones and teeth strength. They're usually incorporated into organic molecules. So, iron is incorporated into your hemoglobin. Iron is an inorganic compound, but in our bodies, we use that iron. The way that we use that iron is incorporating it into hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is an organic molecule. Some minerals exist as part of inorganic compounds. So those salts that we talked about, calcium phosphate is a mineral salt, and that mineral salt is what we are using, in part at least, to make our bones and our teeth stronger. Some of these minerals do you can find them as free ions, meaning they're not bound in salts. So sodium chloride, table salt, is an inorganic salt. In the body, you can find that sodium by itself. You can find that chloride by itself. So it's not necessarily always in a salt form. We use them by themselves. So, sodium is one of the inorganic ions that we use for our nerves to function, right? Depolarization, repolarization, that is when you use some of these free ions, the sodiums, the chlorides, etc. Minerals compose parts of the structural materials of all cells. You will find minerals in all cells of your body, different minerals for different cells, depending on the needs of that cell. Minerals have roles in muscle contraction. So let's think back when we talked about muscle contraction. We talked about how our muscles need calcium in order to contract and in order to relax. So that the role of muscle contraction. We already discussed nerve impulse conduction. So in order to get a nerve impulse from one cell to the next, you have to have certain minerals. Blood coagulation. Remember, coagulation is clotting. In order for blood to clot, you need certain minerals. In order to regulate your pH, you need certain minerals. So, minerals are very important for the functioning of our bodies. Homeostatic mechanisms regulate the concentration of minerals in our body fluids. So, our body balances these minerals in order to keep balance throughout the body. You have to have a certain amount of um, all substances, including vitamins and minerals and amino acids, in order for the body to function properly. And so that is what we're talking about, the homeostatic mechanisms to regulate what is found in the body fluid. Mineral toxicity, so having too many minerals, can result from ingestion of too much of a particular mineral or from overexposure of it, say in our jobs, or if we live too close to certain plants, we can industrial plants, we can get a overexposure of certain minerals in household chemicals. So the chemicals that we use to clean our houses, we can get exposed there, or even in certain drugs. Certain drugs will have our bodies excrete certain things in higher amounts. It'll cause us to retain certain things in higher amounts. So mineral toxicity is possible, but usually when that happens, it's much less a product of we're eating too many minerals, because more than likely that's not going to happen, especially in Western society. Usually it's because we're exposed to it from other things like our jobs, the chemicals used in our jobs, the chemical plants that are near our homes. So we are exposed to it in our groundwater, in our air, etc. And the drugs that we take that are causing our bodies to excrete certain minerals or retain certain minerals. Major minerals or macro minerals account for 0.5%, 0.05% or more of our body weight. So again, not very much, but but it does account for part of our body weight. So calcium, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, sodium, chlorine, magnesium, these are our macro minerals. They macro minerals, meaning they make up a significant enough portion of our body weight. Calcium and phosphorus, P means phosphorus, account for 75% of the mineral elements in our body by weight. So when we're talking about how much of our body weight is minerals, these two are going to be the most of it. So calcium and phosphorus, usually because they make up the majority of what makes our bones harder and stronger. So these charts will tell us what the minerals are, how they're distributed, like in our bones where we tend to find them, what they do, where we can get them, and what happens if we get too much or too little. So make sure that you're looking at this so that you can be aware of why minerals are important in our bodies. And then we have a classification of nutrients called trace elements. Trace elements are also called microminerals. These are essential minerals, so our bodies are not making them. We have to eat them. We don't need them in large amounts. We need them in minute amounts. That's not minute, that means minute, meaning extremely small. So these are minerals that we need in very, very, very small amounts, right? They make up less than 0.005% of the body weight. But if you don't have them, you will absolutely know them because something will not be right, and that could lead you to all kind of disease processes. So these trace elements are those like iron. So even though iron is considered a micro mineral, we know that if we don't get adequate iron, we have anemia, we get tired, we can't function, right? Iron, manganese, copper, iodine. If we get too little iodine, that's when people start to get goiters. Their thyroid starts to get bigger and bigger and bigger because it's overworking. Because you have so little, the thyroid is trying to do what it can with little, so it has to overwork, and our thyroids get bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's why uh, the industry started to iodize salt, so put iodine in the salt so that we're constantly getting these trace iodine levels so that we don't get goiters and our thyroids can function properly. Zinc, well, cobalt is one, zinc is another one, micro mineral, but when do we see zinc? Zinc lozenges, right? I'm sure you've heard of zinc lozenges. Lozenges are those candy-like medicines that we take, that we suck on, so that we can get it to coat our throat to help boost our immune system. So if we're not getting enough zinc, we tend to get more ill more readily. It is thought, some people believe that when we were in COVID lockdown, a lot of people got ill with COVID because they didn't have adequate zinc levels, which meant their immune systems weren't functioning as properly as they could have. Fluorine, right? Fluorine. The reason why they started putting fluoride in our dental treatments and even in our water is because of um, deficiency of fluoride or fluorine can cause problems. Selenium and chromium, same idea. So again, even though these are micro minerals, they're found in minute amounts in the body. They still have, we can see the problems that occurs if we have too little of these trace elements. So this is more about those trace elements. Please make sure you're at least read these a couple times so you can see how important it is to have trace elements in your diet. All right, dietary supplements. Now, I'm not going to agree with this, with everything in this slide, but I'll talk about why. Right? So, dietary supplements proceed with caution. It says that dietary supplements are not classified as either a food or drug. This basically means that the government, excuse me, the government is not regulating dietary supplements. All right. So, um, that means that these supplements sometimes contain ingredients that function actually like pharmaceuticals in the body. With some supplements, some components of some dietary supplements may be toxic if you take too much of them, like your fat soluble vitamins. So if you take too much vitamin A, you take too much vitamin D, you take too much of the water soluble vitamins that your body doesn't excrete as readily, that can become a problem. Let's skip. Well, no, let's not skip. So supplements are regulated by law. They're just not regulated as either food or drugs, and must contain a vitamin, a mineral, an herb, a botanical, etc. And it must be intended to supplement the diet. It cannot be used in place of a good diet. Product labels cannot state that a supplement diagnoses, prevents, treats, or cures any disease. So when you see on supplement labels that, that this statement has not been evaluated by the FDA, it is not meant to diagnose, treat, prevent diseases, that's because legally they have to say that because these products cannot legally state that they cure anything, that they're used to diagnose anything. Even if that nutrient does help to cure a thing, that label cannot state that. They can only state what facts are found out by scientific evidence, right? So if we know that research says that calcium decreases the risk of osteoporosis, then the label can say it contains calcium, and calcium is known to decrease the risk of osteoporosis. That label cannot say calcium cures osteoporosis. Some supplements may have little value, such as those that supply chemicals that are produced in sufficient quantities in the body. If your body produces a vitamin, if your body produces an amino acid, taking that as a supplement really doesn't benefit you a whole lot because your body is already making it. All right, so yeah, there's that. Some supplements can be dangerous, um, maybe not necessarily in and of themselves, but how they interact with other drugs that you're taking. So if a person is taking a drug to help sustain their life, to help control a disease, then certain substances in certain supplements might cause your body to retain that drug more or release that drug quicker, meaning that you'll either have more of that drug or less of that drug working in the body. So let's go back when we talked about the half-life of a substance. Those of you who are currently in dosage calculation, when you take pharmacology, you'll start to understand this, right? So when they make the drugs, they basically test it to see how long is this drug going to stay in the system and do its job. That is how they determine how the dosage of it. So when you have something as 10 milligrams versus 10 micrograms versus 500 milligrams, right? Those numbers are determined by how much your body needs, how much your body is going to retain versus how quickly is going to be excreted in the body. So if you take certain supplements and certain nutrients, that rate of excretion might be affected where it's slower or faster, and that could cause problems. It could actually be very dangerous to a body. So knowing the interactions between the drugs and the supplements can literally save your life. The FDA does not require clinical trials to prove that supplements are safe and effective. So, knowing the supplements that you're taking, knowing the quality of the supplements that you're taking, not all supplements are created equal. Um, for example, if you have a magnesium supplement, there's so many different types of magnesium, and each of those magnesiums can do something different. Knowing that can help you make wiser choices when you're buying supplements over the counter. So let's talk a little bit about healthy eating. An adequate diet can provide sufficient energy. And when we're talking about energy, we're meaning calories. An adequate diet will provide enough calories for you to sustain your activity level and your health. An adequate diet should be able to supply the essential fatty acids, the essential amino acids, the vitamins, and the minerals that you need in order to support optimal growth and to maintain and repair your body tissues as you move forward through life. An adequate diet should provide that. As we said, sometimes the food that we eat don't have adequate nutrients. So sometimes you will have to supplement your diet um, with vitamins, multivitamin, multimineral supplements, etc. The requirements of nutrients vary by your age, the sex designated at birth, how quickly you're growing. Remember, newborns, toddlers growing much faster than you are as young adults, and you are growing much faster than I am, right? As an older adult. The level of physical activity, someone who is mostly sedentary, who doesn't do very much, will have very different requirements as somebody who is an athlete. Your stress level, stress burns through minerals, stress burns through vitamins. So if you have high stress, i.e., you are a student, you will need to take in more nutrient-rich, vitamin and mineral-rich foods in order to combat that stress. Otherwise, you'll burn through your nutrients and then you won't have adequate amounts for regular body functions. And then your dietary needs will also vary according to your genetics and what's going on in the environment around you. If the food supply is adequate, most healthy adults can obtain great nutrition by eating a varied diet, right? So eating um, plant-based, high amounts of plant-based meals, so lots of vegetables, lots of fruits, and then varying those vegetables and fruits so that you get the different nutrients obtained by those. If the only fruit you eat is bananas and oranges, and the only vegetables you eat are corn and carrots, you're not getting the full spectrum of vitamins, minerals, and other nutrients that your body needs. You'll more likely need to supplement or just eat more varied vegetables and fruit. Dietary requirements such as the recommended daily allowances or the RDA are good baselines to follow. All right, good baselines to follow. Now, again, my holistic background will say that you shouldn't just eat the RDA. You should probably eat more than the RDA because the RDA is typically going to mean this is how much of this nutrient you need to avoid getting ill. Think about what I'm saying. This is how much a body needs to avoid getting ill. That does not mean this is how much your body needs to become healthy or maintain health. It is just trying to keep you from getting ill. All right. And those are two different statements. Please know that. All right. The food pyramid is what we used to look at as a hierarchy of needs. What foods your body needs most to least. Food pyramids can offer suggestions on how to follow a healthy diet by organizing foods according to proportion sizes. The food plate, which is what we now use more, the U.S. Department of Agriculture has created the My Plate, the food plate, and that has largely replaced the food pyramid to say this is how we should eat. Now, naturopathically, I would definitely say use more of the food plate, the My Plate suggestion, and even that I would modify. So I would say if you focus your meals around your vegetables instead of focusing it around the meat or the carbohydrates, then you're likely to then get more vegetables, more varied vegetables, and you're more likely to get adequate amounts of vitamins and minerals in order to help your body your body processes function properly. Nutritional information as well as ingredients are two of the things that are listed on the back of food labels. And that is going to tell you also what's in that product. So we know that there are different types of diets out there, and these are some of what these terms mean. When a person says that they are vegan, that means that they don't eat any animal products, no animal foods. That means they're not eating meat, they're not eating poultry or fish, right, which is animal muscle. They're not eating cheese or milk that comes from an animal. Some vegans even go so far as to avoid honey because honey is made by bees. Bees are living creatures, right? Closer to animals. So they don't want to eat any animal food or any products that come from animals. Ovo vegetarian. Ovo means egg. So this means that this is a person who is basically vegan, but they also eat eggs. Lacto vegetarian. So again, pretty much they're vegan, except that they do consume dairy products, so milk and cheese. Lacto-ovo vegetarian, they're mostly vegan, but they also eat dairy products and eggs. Pescatarian or pesco-vegetarian, these are people who will typically eat the only plant animal products that they eat will usually be fish. And for some pescatarians, they will eat dairy and eggs. Again, it depends on what that person feels comfortable eating, what that person feels is most beneficial for their bodies. And then you have the semi-vegetarian who only eats dairy, eggs, chicken, and fish, but they don't eat red meats. So this is the My Plate. So this, if you go to choosemyplate.gov, you'll see this image. And again, as a holistic health practitioner, I actually vary this a little bit because I don't really like this, but we'll use this as a standard. So here it says that a quarter of your plate or a little bit more than a fourth of your plate should be vegetables and a little bit less of your less than a quarter of your plate is fruit. So let's say half of your plate should be vegetables and fruit. Then you have your grains. Remember, grains are also plant products, right? So most of your plate should be plant-based products, right? So if you use whole grains like brown rice, black rice, those rices, anything outside of white rice, that still has the fiber and the other nutrients inside of it, and you have mostly vegetables and some fruit with a small portion of protein, then you're more likely to get a balanced diet. Now here, um, on the My Plate model, it says to get a cup of dairy, a cup of milk. And they say we want to drink milk to get calcium. I would say if you just increase your vegetables and you eat more varied vegetables, you're going to get calcium because remember, the cows got the calcium from the plants as well, just like you can. So get more vegetables, like increased vegetables, then you don't necessarily need dairy. You don't necessarily need dairy. But that's not to say don't drink it. If you feel like it's beneficial for you, go for it. Clinical application. So, nutrition for athletes. Athletes and sedentary people, people who don't move very much, they're not very active, they have different nutritional needs. For someone who does more, they need more. For someone who does more, they also need more vitamins and minerals in order to help them function properly. Frequent, strenuous activity can be supported by a diet consisting of more carbohydrates, so it says 60% carbohydrates because a person who is doing more activity needs more energy more readily. So they can utilize more carbohydrate rich foods because they're going to burn that off quicker. Athletes should eat most carbohydrates from vegetables and grains, and oftentimes it'll be recommended that athletes eat more frequently because you want to maintain how much energy your body has because your metabolism is typically quicker. Athletes should eat 25% more protein than sedentary people. Protein can help your energy level be more sustained. Remember, as you eat more carbohydrates, and whether it's complex or simple, your blood sugar is going to increase, meaning your insulin level is going to increase. If you eat high protein diet, then your energy level will be more sustained more often, meaning that your insulin levels won't spike, and that will cause you to regulate your blood sugar more often, um, decreasing the chances that you'll end up with blood sugar dysregulation like type 2 diabetes or metabolic syndrome. If following a balanced diet, athletes should not need vitamins or mineral supplements. I would say, though, that even with a balanced diet, an athlete, especially if you are pushing yourself very hard, you are a top athlete, you probably still need to supplement with a good quality mineral supplement and or vitamin supplement as well. Example, creatine supplements. So we talked about creatine and how the body uses creatine and creatinine when we talked about the musculoskeletal system, or especially the muscles. Creatine supplements do not seem to improve athletic performance, except maybe during peak exertion. Remember that creatine, creatinine, it is used to help take those ADP molecules and quickly convert them back to ATP so that you have energy to use. Unless you are at peak performance, most of us don't need creatine supplements. It seems to make muscle cells larger, but this is due to osmosis of water moving into the cell, not necessarily because that muscle cell is actually larger. So, unless you are actively working out, if you are an athlete and you are in season and you're working out every day, sometimes twice a day, then maybe these creatine supplements will work for you. But if you're not, then you don't necessarily need to waste your money on supplementing with creatine supplements. Now let's talk about malnutrition. Excuse me. Malnutrition is defined as poor nutrition that results from the lack of essential nutrients or the inability of your body to use those essential nutrients. Malnutrition can be defined as or categorized as undernutrition or even overnutrition. Both of those are malnutrition. Remember, mal does mean bad. So you can get too few nutrients, you can get too many nutrients, and both of those can cause problems in the body. Undernutrition is a form of malnutrition resulting from too little essential nutrients, too little of those nutrients that your body cannot make on its own. Overnutrition is a type of malnutrition that results from taking in too much of certain nutrients, especially when you're talking about calories, carbohydrates, lipids, like those macronutrients. We in Western society tend to focus on macronutrients, carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids. And so we tend to eat a lot more of those, especially carbohydrates and lipids, and we don't focus on those micronutrients. So that makes us have overnutrition with certain nutrients, and that will tend to be undernutrition, or too little of those micronutrients. Lack of food, so just not having food at all available, can lead to malnutrition. Eating poor quality food, so food that is highly processed, lots and lots of additives, lots of preservatives, those will end up being poorer quality or lower quality. Eating too much of that can cause malnutrition. Overeating, especially if you're eating more macronutrients and not enough micronutrients, or taking too many supplements where you are taking in too high amounts of certain nutrients and it's not balanced by others. All of those could lead to malnutrition, which can be a combination of overnutrition and undernutrition. We can classify malnutrition as either primary or secondary malnutrition. Primary malnutrition is malnutrition that occurs from diet alone, right? So you're eating too little of certain things or too much of certain things. It's under or overnutrition just from diet alone. Secondary malnutrition means you have an adequate diet, but individual characteristics make the diet insufficient. For example, how is your body processing certain things, such as a person with a deficiency of bile salts? They may develop a deficiency of fat-soluble vitamins. So, for example, remember when we talked about the digestive system, we said that the liver will produce bile and it'll store it in the gallbladder. Your liver is always producing bile, whether or not you're eating, whether or not you need it in that moment, it's always producing it. So the gallbladder stores it so that when you do need it, it's there and it can excrete it for use to help you absorb and utilize the lipids from your diet. And by absorbing the lipids, you're also absorbing fat-soluble vitamins. I hope that you are seeing like connections between all of these systems. So let's say a person has their gallbladder removed. Now, oftentimes physicians will say you don't need to worry about it, your body will function fine. And for many people, that may be the case, but you also want to keep in mind that if you have a deficiency in bile salts, right, you don't have it when you need it because, let's say in the case of a person who has their gallbladder removed, you may develop a deficiency in fat-soluble vitamins because you don't have the bile salts when you need them to be able to absorb the fat from your diet, which contains those fat-soluble nutrients from the diet. You're not able to absorb those and utilize those. So, secondary malnutrition, you're eating it, your body just can't use it for whatever reason. Starvation. Starvation. A healthy human can survive for far more days than you realize without food. You can survive for 2 months, 2.5 months without eating, especially if you have you have adequate adipose tissue and muscle for your body to utilize. All right, so just because you're not eating one day or you don't eat a meal does not mean you're starving. Your body could go many days, well more than a month or two, maybe even 2.5 months without food. During starvation, though, your body starts to digest itself. Again, your body will start to use those fat cells, the the lipids in your adipose tissue, right? So that is all had been incorporated into what makes up your body. And so when you go without food, your body will tap into those fat stores in order to maintain energy. If you don't have adequate fat stores, then your body can start to use your amino acids, which is produced from your muscles as energy. Symptoms of starvation. A person may have low blood pressure, their pulse will slow down, they may have chills, their skin might become drier, their hair might start to fall out, and their immune systems may start to work more poorly. Remember, proteins make up your antibodies, right? So if you are not taking in adequate amounts of amino acids and proteins, your immune system will start to function poorly. Low blood pressure, remember, um, plasma proteins will help to maintain osmotic balance. If you don't have adequate proteins in floating around in your plasma, then you cannot maintain adequate blood pressure. Slow pulse chills, just like slow metabolism, when you have, say, your thyroid is functioning slowly or hypothyroid, everything slows down, like your pulse, and you end up getting more chilled because remember, heat is being produced by the breaking of the bonds. If you're not breaking as many of those bonds for energy, you're not producing as much heat, your body becomes more chilled. So let's talk about different disorders that result from starvation. You have marasmus, kwashiorkor, anorexia nervosa, and bulimia. All of these are are caused by nutritional disorders. Marasmus. Marasmus occurs due to low calories and low proteins. Low calories and low proteins. So let's say that we see commercials and they are in places like Africa and they're showing the little babies that are very thin, but they have very big bellies. Those babies tend to have marasmus because they don't have adequate food to eat. And not only do they have low calories, but they also don't have adequate protein. So their bodies start to digest itself for um, for nutrition. Kwashiorkor, protein starvation. So you might have adequate calories, but you don't have adequate protein, and that looks different, right? Those are two different ones, even though both of them are caused by protein deficiency. One has adequate calories, the other one does not. Anorexia nervosa. This is an eating disorder where the person starves themselves. They don't eat enough food because they're causing it. Not that they don't have access to it, but they, for whatever reason, are seeing food as the enemy, food as a bad thing, and they stop eating, which will cause problems. And then bulimia is an eating disorder where a person will binge eat. They'll eat a whole lot of food at any one time, and then they'll start to purge. So they eat a lot, a lot, a lot. They feel guilty, and then they take and they make themselves vomit that food up. So they're not getting the nutrients from that food because even though they ate it, they're throwing it up before that food can get into the small intestines and you can absorb those nutrients. So those are different types of nutritional disorders and starvation disorders. For all of these, the bodies are not getting what it needs. It's not able to absorb a full complement of nutrients that it needs, so it's not able to function properly. And some of the changes that can occur as a person gets older. Keep in mind, as I mentioned previously, a few times previously, the stage of your life will determine what you need nutritionally. You don't need the same amount of nutrients at every stage of your life because your growth rate, your repair rate, your metabolism rate will change according to where you are in your life cycle. BMR rises in early childhood. because these children are growing at a high rate. It peaks in adolescence. Your BMR peaks in adolescence. And as you get older, your BMR starts to decline. Um, Change in nutrition often reflects in the effects of medical condition and your social and economic circumstance, how much money you have, how much you have access to, even if you have the money to buy certain things, are certain things available in your immediate neighborhood. Medical conditions, hypertension, so high blood pressure, diabetes, blood sugar dysregulation, cholesterol levels, all of those are medical conditions that are affected by your nutrition. Depression can be caused by poor nutrition. Tooth decay, periodontal disease, diabetes, all are um, affected by your nutrition level. A deficiency of vitamin A may take a long time to show up because vitamin A is a fat soluble vitamin. So, whatever you did take previously might be stored in your fat tissue. Even though you're not taking it in, your body can liberate it from the fat in your body. But eventually, if you're not taking in adequate amounts of vitamin A, eventually your body will go through those vitamin A stores and then show up later as a vitamin A deficiency. Calcium deficiency may not show symptoms like bone loss or decrease in mineral content. Um, So as a person gets older, that's when you'll want to start doing more bone density scans so that you can see how dense are my bones right now. And then in a few years, you could take another scan and compare the density of those bones to see, are you maintaining? Have you lost bone? Are you closer to osteopenia and osteoporosis? So you can still have calcium deficiency, but you may not see it as readily until either you get some scans or you start to see the evidence of low bone mineral density. Vitamin D deficiency usually develops because we don't get outside enough. We don't get direct sun exposure onto our skin. So, vitamin D low vitamin D can affect things like how well we are absorbing calcium. So even though vitamin D doesn't necessarily directly affect bone density, indirectly, it's very important in calcium absorption, which leads to more dense bones. It can affect our immune system. So if we don't have adequate vitamin D levels, our immune system may not work as well. Um, uh, Someone just mentioned that their doctor prescribed vitamin D because of thyroid function, right? They said that they must have hypothyroid. Doctor gave them vitamin D to help their thyroid. When I looked it up, vitamin D does not directly affect thyroid, but what they're finding is that there is some level of correlation that people who have hypothyroid tend to have low vitamin D levels. So it doesn't necessarily mean that vitamin D is directly related, but it can be more of an indirect relationship. So understanding nutrition and how it functions in the body can quite literally affect how healthy you are and how well you age, how gracefully you age. As you get older, are you a strong, healthy, vibrant elder? Or are you sickly? You have osteoporosis, you don't have much strength, you have lots more disease. Your nutrition level throughout your lifetime can impact all of that. These are the energy requirements as you get older. Those who are younger will tend to need more calories per day. As you get older, you tend to need less and less calories. This is part of the reason why the appetite of your elders is a lot lower as they get older because their bodies literally don't need as many calories. Their bodies do still need vitamins and minerals, though. So the calories that they do eat, the calories that you do eat, should be very nutrient dense, should have lots of vitamins, lots of minerals. So the moral of the story, once again, make sure that you are eating high amounts of vegetables and fruit so that your cells can work properly. And as you get older, you can maintain um, healthy, vibrant skin, increase levels of vibrancy. You can have more energy. You can be stronger, and you are less prone to disease.